The FIA has just uncovered new evidence that could expose Kimi Antonelli, and it might completely change the podium in Brazil. Max Verstappen started from the pit lane, survived a puncture, and nearly stole second place, but was Antonelli racing clean? What if Mercedes' young star broke the rules under the safety car and it directly impacted Verstappen's result? If Antonelli is penalized, does this mean Verstappen's epic comeback just became even more valuable in the title fight? Something massive just broke in the Formula One world. The FIA has confirmed it is investigating new evidence that could prove Kimi Antonelli gained an unfair advantage during the Brazilian Grand Prix. And the consequences could be huge, not just for Mercedes, but for Max Verstappen, who delivered a stunning drive from the pit lane to the podium. It all seems sealed at the flag. Verstappen had recovered from a weekend disaster, overtaking half the grid, surviving a puncture, and nearly catching Antonelli for second place. Red Bull praised the performance as one of Max's finest in years. But now, questions are being raised about how Antonelli defended his position and whether he used illegally optimized settings during the safety car period. Sources inside the paddock say the FIA is reviewing telemetry and onboard footage that may show Antonelli making changes to brake bias and energy deployment modes while under safety car restrictions, a move that would be strictly prohibited. If proven, that would directly impact Verstappen's position, and potentially elevate him to second place, a critical difference in the tight 2025 title race. For Verstappen, it's another layer of intensity in a season already packed with drama. He started from the very back, raced flawlessly through the field, and finished just 0.3 of a second behind Antonelli. To learn that the car in front may have been bending the rules? That shifts the entire narrative. It turns a heroic drive into one that may have been unfairly denied a higher reward. And for Mercedes, the implications are just as serious. Antonelli has been hailed as the next great hope, the rookie phenom. But if this breach is confirmed, it throws their entire Brazil strategy into controversy, and could trigger not only a time penalty, but a disqualification. The championship battle is no longer just about pace, it's now entangled with legality and trust. Verstappen's comeback may already be one of the standout stories of 2025. But if this investigation ends with action from the FIA, it could retroactively turn Brazil into the moment where the title fight flipped again, not just on track, but off it. And with only 3 races left, there's no room left for politics, errors, or secrets. Brazil 2025 began as one of the lowest points of Max Verstappen's season. After struggling through Friday's free practice sessions with instability and tire degradation, Verstappen's Red Bull RB21 simply didn't respond when it mattered in qualifying. Every lap in Q1 was a battle with the car. He was understeering on entry, snapping loose at apex, and losing nearly half a second in Sector 2 alone. For the first time in years on pure pace, Verstappen was eliminated in Q1. No traffic. No yellow flags. Just a car out of sync with the circuit. The Red Bull engineers were stunned. A setup that had worked well at other high downforce circuits was completely exposed at Interlagos. Verstappen's rear end was too lively, the car lacked traction, and the temperatures had risen more than expected, throwing off their predictions. By the time qualifying ended, Verstappen sat 18th on the grid, fuming. But within an hour, the team made a decision that changed everything. They would brake park firm, swap out the power unit, rebuild the suspension and rake configuration, adjust the floor stiffness. In short, redesign the car overnight. The cost? Verstappen would now start the race from the pit lane, dead last, behind the grid. On a short track like Brazil, where the field tightens quickly and overtaking can be chaotic, it was a huge risk. But the alternative, sticking with a broken setup, would have left them without a chance to fight. No warm-up laps. No long-run data. No time to test how the new build would behave over race distance. Verstappen would enter the race in the dark, trusting his own feel for the car, and his ability to adapt in real time. That's not just physical skill, that's race IQ at the highest level. The new Honda power unit gave him raw speed, but it would be useless without the right touch behind the wheel. Even worse, he'd be facing the grid at its most unpredictable. First lap incidents. Cold brakes. Dirty air. Starting from the pit lane meant losing over 15 seconds by the time he rejoined. And yet, Verstappen welcomed it.
He knew the fight ahead wouldn't be just about overtaking, it would be about managing a race against chaos, carving through the midfield, reading the tires, and communicating perfectly with the pit wall. Red Bull handed Verstappen a completely rebuilt machine, with no guarantees. And yet, they knew he was the only driver on the grid capable of doing something extraordinary with it.
No one expected a podium. No one expected a title-saving performance. But Verstappen's mentality was clear: if the car gave him half a chance, he would take all of it. When Verstappen rolled out of the pit lane at the start of the Brazilian Grand Prix, he was driving a car he'd never properly tested. The RB21 had been stripped down and rebuilt overnight, engine, suspension, balance, floor stiffness all optimized from scratch. Verstappen didn't get a single flying lap to evaluate it. And yet, within 3 corners, he already knew how it behaved. That's what separates world champions from great drivers: instant adaptation under maximum pressure. The first few laps were about survival. Verstappen avoided the midfield chaos that erupted on lap 1 when Leclerc retired after contact involving Antonelli and Piastri. Max held back, read the traffic, and waited for opportunities to open. By lap 4, he was already climbing positions. But just when momentum was building, disaster struck: a puncture. Forced into an early stop, Verstappen lost time and track position again. Most would have panicked. Verstappen didn't. He and Red Bull recalculated on the fly. With the early pit stop locking him into a compromised stint, they adjusted to a rare 3-stop strategy. It was bold. On paper, it meant he'd need to overtake cars multiple times. But it played directly into Verstappen's strengths: short bursts of pace on fresh tires, perfect tire preservation, and surgical overtaking. And that's exactly what he delivered. With each stint, he carved through the field. Verstappen overtook Aston Martins, Alpines, and both Mercedes with clean, decisive moves. Every pass was built from patience, setting up the line 3 corners ahead, reading battery deployment from rivals, and making moves stick without contact. It wasn't luck. It was timing and precision, lap after lap. Behind the scenes, Red Bull's pit wall was in perfect sync. Gianpiero Lambiase fed Max only what he needed: brake balance cues, traffic gaps, pit windows. Verstappen responded by adjusting diff settings, managing ERS maps, and calling for undercuts at exactly the right moment. There was no second guessing. The rebuilt car worked, but only because Max knew how to unlock its potential. By the final stint, Verstappen was flying. On soft tires, with clean air ahead, he was lapping nearly a second quicker than everyone on track. He caught Russell, overtook him cleanly, and began chasing Antonelli despite having started the race from the pit lane and surviving a puncture. In just 71 laps, he'd gone from last to third, finishing less than 0.4 of a second from second. Red Bull weren't just impressed. They were speechless. What was already one of the most impressive comeback drives in recent memory has now become the center of a possible regulatory storm. Just hours after Verstappen crossed the line in third, the FIA confirmed it was investigating Kimi Antonelli for an alleged illegal change of car settings under the safety car. And that changes everything. If a penalty is applied, Verstappen could be retroactively promoted to second, a major shift not just in points, but in momentum. The updated Drivers' Championship standings after Brazil tell the story of a 3-way war. Lando Norris leads with 390 points, Oscar Piastri holds second with 366, and Verstappen, after scoring a crucial podium, now sits at 341. He's just 25 points behind Piastri, and 49 behind Norris, with 86 points left on the table across the final 3 rounds including a sprint weekend. But here's the real twist: if Antonelli's position is ruled illegal and Verstappen is promoted to second, those 18 points become 22, and the gap to Norris shrinks to just 45. That might sound small, but at this stage in the season, those few points could decide a world championship. And more importantly, it signals to Norris and Piastri that Verstappen is not only fast, he's closing in. This situation now forces McLaren into a new mental state. They were comfortable heading into Brazil, Norris in dominant form, Piastri still ahead of Verstappen, and Red Bull appearing out of sorts. But Verstappen's drive from the pit lane has exposed how dangerous he still is when everything clicks. If FIA rulings tilt the results even slightly in his favor, the psychological pressure on McLaren's young duo will spike. Meanwhile, Red Bull now has renewed belief.
Brazil showed they can build a car overnight, hand it to Verstappen, and watch him fight through the field with total confidence. And now, with potential FIA rulings still pending, they might receive an additional boost without turning a wheel. That combination performance plus off-track momentum is exactly what they need heading into the final stretch. For Verstappen, the job remains the same: execute every race to perfection. But for McLaren? They must now defend against both the stopwatch and the FIA's findings. Brazil may have seemed like a narrow win for them on paper. But in reality, it might be the moment when Verstappen turned this title fight back in his favor.